make some more. Woman's unpaid work, her productive and reproductive labour for which she receives no remuneration, underpins the world's economy. Yet it is peripheral to the world's economy as men define it, and therefore has no value. How did men come to be the ones who define work and value?
It's like a woman is a cook and a man is a chef. And when a woman creates, it's supposedly almost a natural thing to do. And because it is a natural thing to do, it is not of value.
Taste is the feminine of genius.
I had been warned early on about what it meant to be a girl, but I hadn't listened. You write like a man, an editor wrote me on reading a draft of a few early chapters. When you learn to write like a woman, we will consider publishing you.
I never approached a picture with more iniquitous prejudice against it than I did Miss Thompson's, partly because I always said that no woman could paint.
I have the greatest sympathy for your lordship, because the name of a woman makes one doubtful until one has seen the work. This will show your lordship what a woman can do.
You must prepare more earnestly and eagerly for your real calling, the only calling of a young woman. I mean the state of a housewife.
The house seems to take up so much time. I mean, when I've got to clean up twice over or wash up extra unnecessary things, I get frightfully impatient and want to be working. So often this week you and Gordon have been talking while I wash dishes. And after you've gone, I walk about with a mind full of ghosts of saucepans and primer stoves. And you calling, whatever I'm doing, writing, "Tig, isn't there going to be tea? It's 5 o'clock.
Well, I do think men are very lucky. I mean, it must be really nice to come home and have someone to care for you, to say, have you had a good day, or, you know, to cook your food and to really care for you and love you. And I don't think men are very good at that.
It is probable, however, that both in life and in art, the values of a woman are not the values of a man. And for that, of course, she will be criticised. For the critic of the opposite sex will be genuinely puzzled and surprised by an attempt to alter the current scale of values, and will see in it not merely a difference of view, but a view that is weak, or trivial, or sentimental, because it differs from his own. All women are tortured by contradictory pressures, but none more so than the female artist. The art she is attracted to is the artistic expression of men. Given the present orientation of art history, she is not likely to have seen much women's work. The three principal art history survey texts continue to minimize the contributions of women to Western art. The 1986 revised edition of H.W. Janssen's ubiquitous History of Art contains 19 black and white illustrations of work by women artists, as opposed to 1,060 by men.
Taste is the feminine of genius.
Culture is successful politics.
Civil and political liberty is of no use to women and should therefore be kept from them. Since they are destined to spend their entire lives shut up in either the paternal or the marital home, and are born to be dependent from the moment of their birth until they die, they have been endowed only with private virtues. A woman's only rightful place is in her parents' or her husband's house. Of all that goes on outside her home, she should know nothing beyond what her parents or her husband see fit to tell her.
Power would reign without control or inquiry. Its throne is built across a dark abyss, which no eye must dare to explore, lest the baseless fabric should totter under investigation. Obedience, unconditional obedience, is the catchword of tyrants of every description.
The public and the private worlds are inseparably connected. The tyrannies and civilities of the one are the tyrannies and civilities of the other.
I want to say right here that those well-meaning friends on the outside who say that we have suffered these horrors of prison, of hunger strikes and forcible feeding because we desire to martyrize ourselves for the cause are absolutely and entirely mistaken. We never went to prison in order to be martyrs. We went there in order that we might obtain the rights of citizenship. We were willing to break laws that we might force men to give us the right to make laws.
Most governments are governments of men. Nowhere do women hold more than a minority of seats in national legislatures. The powerful and prestigious government posts are typically held by men across the entire spectrum of political systems. Women in cabinet-level positions remain exceptions to the rule everywhere.
When we talk about democracy, we have to talk about an ideal, because it is an ideal, where women's needs are met. And it is an ideal where women's contribution to society is recognized, and a whole dimension which is related to the private sphere is validated and legitimized as important.
We live in a system of power that is male supremacist. This means that society is organized on the assumption that men are superior to women and that women are inferior to men. Male supremacy is regarded as being either divine or natural, depending on the apologist for it.
It is not possible to separate religion from the political system, nor to keep sex separate from politics.
For many women, for many years, a crucial consideration in daily life has been male power. It has had implications for virtually every aspect of women's existence. That we have not inherited a tradition in which male power is perceived as a problem is because male power is not ordinarily a problem for men. How could patriarchy afford to accept that men were a serious social problem and to discuss with impartiality the origins of male power and the means by which it is maintained?
When men imagine a female uprising, they imagine a world in which women rule men as men have ruled women. Their guilt, which is the guilt of every ruling class, will allow them to see no middle ground.
The woman question in the end is not the question of women. It is not we who are the problem, and it is not our needs which are the mystery. From our perspective, denied by centuries of masculine analysis, the woman question becomes the question of how shall we all, women and children and men, organize our lives together. And this is the only question.
started writing in radio, I remember the first interview I went to with whoever he was, the head of drama or something, and I was told that there are 2 rules to remember as a radio writer. One is don't write any fantasy, and the second is never write more than 2 women in a scene because they all catch each other's tones.
You know, you're told about the great masters, if only in the term of masters means that there were no mistresses.
I think feminism has had a very big impact in the arts, but not because men have become more enlightened, I hasten to add, but because women are pushing so hard. It was both the most frustrating experience I'd had to date and the most exhilarating experience. And it was very ambitious, you know. It was one of those things where, yeah, what a great idea, you know, let's put on a film festival, this sounds fantastic. And we had something like, we imported about 80 films, and we had 20 feature films and 60 short, so it might have been more feature films by all these women, directors from all over the world, you know, and I discovered that the first animation film that had ever been made by a woman, and just really, I mean, I found it just a really, really exciting time, and it turned my head around completely, I suppose. And I suddenly discovered that there were all these people of achievement, all these women that I'd never ever heard of, and they'd done quite remarkable things.
Women Artists Library is an organization that collects information on women artists, historical and contemporary women, whether it's painting, sculpture, filmmaking, embroidery, because the whole problem with the work that women do is that it is not documented, and in terms of history, it's very often lost.
The film festival was a really milestone for me. It's the first time that I really became aware of the actual ingrained discrimination against women and women's activities, women's preoccupations. You know, like here we were importing all these extraordinary films, many of which had never been seen in New Zealand, by, you know, major pieces of work, and certainly one of the biggest international film festivals ever to be held in the country. And the media completely ignored it. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And, you know, the women researchers for the various television programs would come around and talk avidly with you about this, and this was terribly exciting. And it would never, ever get past the editors, and they wouldn't, you know, do the work on it. And I just found it, first of all, completely unreasonable and unbelievable. And then eventually the sort of horrible realization that ultimately it could only have been because, you know, that things that women do are not as interesting as the things that men do.
The museums and art galleries are severely lacking in women.